on the line now, Matt Dicey from Bannockburn. How you doing, Matt?
Pretty well, thank you, Leanne. Self?
Very, very well indeed. Yeah, you're coping with a cold. You're used to it, aren't you?
Oh, wow. I love it when the sun's out. It's not so much fun when the cloud's over and it's freezing cold and it's cloudy.
You haven't got fog or cloud, have you, now?
We've got like low cloud. So, yep, one of those days.
Oh, no. Well, if you just zip down the road to Gibbston, I wish you could be here because it's actually very blue sky, really sunny.
Oh, that's the nasty part about living in Bannockburn, where you actually look through the Kawarau down towards Roemeg, and it's always sunny down there, so I can see the sun and I can see the snow on the hills, but we're clagged under. Yeah, it's lovely.
Lovely. You've had quite a bit of change lately, Matt, haven't you? Because, 20 years, long time to be one place, Mount Difficulty, and, you're respected as the chief winemaker there, and then... You stepped down and took a punt, and you're doing something new. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yep. So it's something new, but something old. We've my wife Alison and I, and my brother James and his wife Adele have had a label for the past sort of 14 odd years or so, but it's been sort of very much a little part-time project that we've all sort of done whilst, and to be fair, most of the burden of that's actually fallen on James and Adele's shoulders. Sort of running that, and that was a little brand called Ceres, which for us had a lot of connection because it's where we were both born in South Africa. But it's for a number of reasons it just didn't work as a brand in New Zealand. Partly because you've got Ceres Organics, and partly because it's a name that people can't pronounce, and it's not that memorable. So about 18 months ago, we embarked on a project to sort of change it out. And we'd never wanted to use our surname, partly because it wasn't really an ego project. It's not really about us and putting a name on the bottle, but at the same time, Dicey just happens to be quite an interesting word with some quite cool meanings that making
totally.
wine in Central Otago, dangerous, somewhat unpredictable, and that resonated, and it is somewhat of a memorable name as well. So we bit the bullet and did a sort of a rebrand and came up with a whole new sort of architecture, so we leapt into that in February of last year in anticipation of me leaving Mount Difficulty, which I did in about June, and then jumping sort of feet first into this. So I've just been sort of in it now for just over a year, which has been a steep learning curve.
I can imagine. But you were saying when I talked to you yesterday that you really like being a bit more hands-on now, that you're quite enjoying the change up.
Yeah, it's one of those funny things that often the better you are at a job, the least of that job you actually get to do. You get good at something, so they promote you, and you end up managing people and things and doing all of those sort of fun things rather than what you actually did when you started, which was, for me, making wine, getting your hands dirty, being involved in amongst it. And that was sort of a large, for me, the goal was to actually stop driving the computer quite so much and get back in and get back hands-on. So, it's been a fantastic change from that perspective, and certainly achieved those goals.
Yeah. So you're not finding that you're busier than ever, are you? Or is it a better busy?
Yeah. People keep asking me how it's going with retirement, and it's going disappointingly busy. It's one of those funny things, running a small business, that you end up doing absolutely everything. So there's actually more demands rather than less demands on your time, and every time you stop doing everything, that thing doesn't happen. So you end up sort of getting busier, and you feel like you're not going, you're just not achieving quite as much because you don't have that level of support and help around you to help drive some of the other things that are happening all the time in a slightly larger business.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, you're so connected with this region, aren't you? And with Bannockburn, and all those years at Mount Difficulty, and a lot of people, I think, consider you a bit of a king of, a king of the grape, really, in this area. And people say they like you because you're a bit cheeky. Do you think that label is warranted, or are you just irreverent and you don't take yourself too seriously?
I'd like to think more irreverent, and it's more about enjoying ourselves and enjoying what we do. And if the outcome of that is we get the opportunity to make some great wine, that's fantastic. So it all has to fit in part of that whole work-life balance thing that everybody sort of talks about, but you end up just spending more time working and less time enjoying life. And we're certainly right in the midst of that, working too hard right now. But I think that's the realm of anybody that jumps into a small business.
Especially if you take pride in your work. Like, if it's fine if you don't give a toss, but if you're someone like you, who does give a toss and you care about the product, then you will probably lose sleep about things occasionally. What's exciting that you're producing right now? I was really interested to read that you do a Chenin Blanc. We've been lucky enough to have vineyards here since the early part of the 2000s, and working for Mount Difficulty, we were able to sort of plant and develop vineyards, even if we couldn't sort of make wine from them ourselves. And sort of some of that was the changing landscape of what is Central Otago. In the early 2000s, almost every single thing that was planted was Pinot Noir. And then as you sort of step forward through the years, that's become less and less of the 100% landscape, if you like, and now there's a lot of other things sort of starting to pop up, and that was one of the sort of things that we really wanted to do, was have a few other strings to the bow. So there's a Chenin, there's a Gamay, there's a little bit of Syrah planted, so there's, as well as sort of the more mainstream Pinot offerings, Riesling, Chardonnay, Pinot Gris. So it's lovely to have some of those other bits and pieces that actually add a lot of colour and interest into what is wine in Central Otago. I reckon, like I was just reading that the Chenin only costs sort of $26, and one of the esteemed wine writers, Bob Campbell, he said it was absolutely delicious, and with a sweet and sour tension. So that got me going, because I love Chablis and Chenin Blanc and trying different things like that, and I kind of got excited that there was actually a local one, so I'd love to try that myself, personally.
Yeah, the nice thing is there's a few. It's not just us that's doing this. Mount Edward has a Chenin, Ammersfield has a Chenin, so there's actually a couple of sort of local things, but they just don't get anywhere near the sort of the airtime that the Pinots do.
Yeah, well, it should change, don't you think?
Well, hopefully, as we grow up and we sort of start realising that there's a lot more to the world of wine than the narrow, sort of slightly francophilic focus that we do have, and then you can grow other things and they can be interesting, and that it really just does provide a lot more interest and depth into what you do.
The Gamay, like, I don't know anything about a Gamay at all. But I heard it's been described as a poor man's Pinot.
Yep, it was. It's something. That was the poor man's Pinot, because it was not seen as quite as noble once back in the day when you had the kings and the queens of Burgundy and things. So it was the more affordable, easier to grow sibling, if you like, but it makes these wines that are just delicious. And as a grape, it comes from a part of France, so we're still in France here, but just south of where Pinot Noir is historically grown in Burgundy, a region called the Beaujolais. And it's been growing there for a really long time, and they went through a really tough spell, and they introduced Beaujolais Nouveau to try and sort of invigorate Gamay. It's one of the hard things about drinking wines from France is unless you know what the region is and then what grape they grow in that region, you really don't know, so that they don't make it really easy for you to say, oh, I'd love to try a Gamay, and they're like, well, we don't call it Gamay, it's just Beaujolais, or it's about the village.
Yeah.
So, and they sort of tried to, the whole Beaujolais Nouveau thing was about sort of reinvigorating Gamay, and it did do that for a while. But there was, at the same time, in the last sort of couple of decades, there's been this whole reinvigoration of Beaujolais and the crus, the greater growths that they have there, and sort of bringing Gamay back to the fore and showing that it's a delicious, really attractive, upfront, fruity, really easy to love wine that just sort of wears its heart on its sleeve. It really is a delicious alternative, and to Pinot. So, and these days, for those people that enjoy drinking the wines of Vigne, they've got really expensive. So, Gamay is actually a much more affordable option. It's, you're sort of talking maybe $30, $40, $50 a bottle, rather than in the hundreds of dollars a bottle that you are if you sort of go slightly further north into Burgundy.
True. Hey, well, I think you've chosen a couple of songs today, so it probably is time to have a little short music break. I hope you can hang on for a bit. I hope you don't have any pressure to jump away.
No, that's all right. I'm just meandering around the cellar, topping some Chardonnay, actually.
Oh, there you go. All right. Well, that's fine.
There you go.
You can top away a bit.
I'll continue topping the Chardonnay while you break into something.
Let's take the first song that you chose, which is a classic old one from Talking Heads. I used to thrash this. What do you love about this song? And She Was.
It is that, like, where did you start? What music did you listen to when you were growing up? And that was that era. Talking Heads, Pink Floyd, Dire Straits, Violent Femmes, all of those things were the music of our childhood.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you picked this because it's one of my favourites as well. And She Was. It's Talking Heads, and that's Matt Dicey's choice today, the winemaker from Bannockburn. James, it's your brother, for God's sake.
He is the brother. Yeah, definitely the better looking version.
Oh, can we have him instead?
Yeah, I've always been said I've got a face for radio, so it's perfect.
Oh, that's terrible. You work closely with James, don't you?
Yep, yeah. I mean, the family's actually been involved in Mount Divilly right from word go. So, they were instrumental in sort of running the vineyards and starting that whole thing off. And James was overseas to start with, and he came back in either 04 or 05 and sort of worked alongside my dad. So for the last 22 odd years, I've actually worked alongside either for starters my father, Robin, and then more latterly James. Yep, it's definitely been a family affair for a long time.
It's quite unusual that families actually get on and can work in business together, don't you find?
Yeah, lots of examples of people not working so well together, and I guess it's just respecting each other's space and sort of allowing them to be who you are, and having interests outside of things that are somewhat separate. Even though, I actually look down on James. James and I live about 600 metres from our house, but we've got the Bannockburn between us, so there's a large natural gorge that separates us. Yeah.
Okay, so that's probably a healthy distance.
Yeah, we can yell at each other across the creek, but
the valley.
We tend not to.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Your father is an impressive sounding man, Robin. He grew up in South Africa and did his winemaking training, and then he came out here to New Zealand in '77. So you would have been you were born by then, I presume. Yeah,
I was a 5-year-old when we came out.
And so it must have been quite strange, for all of you, like ending up, in New Zealand, in this part of the world. What are your early memories of Central Otago?
Well, when we first came out, we were actually imported by Corbyn's back in the late 70s. And Robin, as you said, was a sort of a trained viticulturalist, so he was actually brought out to set vineyards up for them in Tolaga Bay. Which was a sort of a new endeavour, and this is before Marlborough had really kicked off.
Yeah, very different to here too.
Yeah, very different to here. So yeah, quite a different place from South Africa. So the whole thing was quite an eye opener for him and my mum. And I was only a wee taker back then, but I have some classic memories of growing up in amongst the vines and in amongst I remember as a wee kid jumping on a machine harvester and just eating grapes off the belt. You can imagine a little kid just snacking on all of these rich grapes as they were flying by. So I got these great memories of back then. But we only lasted a couple of years in Otago Bay. When my dad's a bit of an independent soul and didn't really enjoy the yoke of the large corporate, so he went off, did kiwi fruit for a number of years in the Bay of Plenty, and that's really where we sort of grew up. And it wasn't until the early 90s when we actually moved into Central, and that was as a result of a ski holiday, actually, a ski holiday and a chance meeting with Rolf Mills way back in the day.
Right. So did you grow up in Tauranga? Have a bit of time there?
Karikari, yeah, just north of Tauranga. Yeah.
Okay,
yep.
Interesting. So yeah, you've lived in a few different places, and okay. So but of course, I suppose, is Central Otago a very hard place for you to leave now?
There's nowhere that feels more like home than Central. As much as I grew up in the Bay of Plenty, this very much now feels like home and sort of gets ingrained in your soul. It has quite a different feel to the rest of New Zealand. Living here and sort of working here and playing here and doing all of those things, and that was part of the attraction to moving here in the first place. It was. There's an opportunity to make wine and make some great wine and be sort of involved in the beginning of an industry. We're in its sort of second wave at least, not perhaps a pioneer, but certainly involved in that next wave of people that started coming through in the late 90s. But it was also the attraction of playing here, skiing and mountain biking and summer having the lake at our doorstep and all those things. So that was equally intriguing as a proposition as to not only being able to potentially make wine and have a career here, but also to then also be able to have it and play and enjoy life.
Yeah, exactly.
And man, it's a different place now than it was in the late 90s.
Yeah, it's so different. I remember coming here in the 90s too, and it got a hold of me 100%, probably from the first visit. Actually, I thought, I want to live here, which is weird. But yeah, it's very, very different now, isn't it? For better or for worse, do you think it's changed negatively, or is it not in bad shape? There's a leading question.
There's a leading question. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those tricky things. We wouldn't be here. The wine industry is as I said, a new industry. They were talking about pioneers in the 70s and 80s, and I don't think Cromwell would have turned into the little thriving metropolis that it is without the wine industry. It was a pretty sleepy, backwards place. With the largest employer was the meatworks back in the day. Once the dam had sort of disappeared, and so certainly to start with the grapes and now grapes and the other sort of horticulture industries that have popped up more latterly, like cherries and things. That's really changed the whole dynamic of what it is in Central Otago, or at least the Cromwell Basin, and that's a massive amount of development's been centred on those two industries, and now you're starting to see the growth of support, not just the support industries, but tourism and things really starting to become a thing. Yeah, we've all, I think, really enjoyed the sort of the return to a quieter time over COVID.
Lockdown and COVID.
Yeah, so it has really illustrated the place that I think that a lot of us remembered Central to be. So for me, I think one of the challenges of coming back is they all talk about how do you have, good tourists rather than just high volumes of tourists. So how, and that for me is a real challenge. How do you just get, the a fewer people, but extract more sort of resonance from those fewer people.
I agree. I think it's the biggest challenge as we open up now. I think that's what we've got to watch, because nobody I talk to wants to go back to those days.
To how it was.
No nobody does.
Craziness, just busyness everywhere, and you felt like like you were struggling within your own town to recognise what your town was or who it was. And I do feel for a lot of people through the sort of the lockdown periods, because a lot of those tourism and hospitality businesses have really done it tough. So that's not ideal either. But for me, there's certainly a happy medium there somewhere that you can have that and enjoy that, but not go crazy.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that focus on local too. Like I talked to, this region's got a lot to thank the wine industry for. First of all, I think you make a really good point, because without it, it would be a bit dire, I think, particularly through Gibbston, Cromwell, Bannockburn, all around there. It's a wonderful place to visit, because every second driveway is a beautiful vineyard, and it's so nice. I think it really is a special part of New Zealand. But what was my point? I'm getting so carried away with the whole romance of it. But I do agree with you on a lot of points about keeping the quality. Oh yes, Vineyards saying that they loved having locals coming in and supporting them. That was my point. That there has been domestic tourism is thriving at the moment. People love it.
Yeah. And it has. It's been really cool to see, to be able to re-engage in New Zealand, and to have people doing roadies around the country and just going, wow, we have got a really cool place. And now we're all looking to escape and go and do a bit of a holiday again. But it'd be really cool not to forget about those bits as well.
Yeah, totally. So you're a music fan. You're a big music fan, aren't you?
Love a bit of music, love a bit of live music. It's always a really cool thing.
Be good when that happens again here. Just a few more acts coming through would be good. But you've chosen a house song, which is what I'm trying to lead into right now. And, I don't know what it is about you winemakers, but you really like to get down and dirty with some good trance kind of music, don't you? And you're a fan of that, yeah? For me, this song was that sort of beginning of 2000s. We went through the 90s, and it was all big acts, and it was grunge, and it was all of those sort of things. I was deep in there, and that was a time that I was travelling a lot through the US and Europe, and got to see some fantastic concerts. And then sort of coming back to New Zealand in the late 90s, and sort of really connecting with the music scene that was happening here then, which was all of those sort of big fat Wellington sounds starting to drop, and the whole place sort of really connecting with its sort of little reggae and drum and bass and house. And these guys were a band that had been around since the sort of late 90s, but were really at the forefront of some of that more electronic scene at the time, and loved their early stuff like Electron, Micron, and this is a slightly later, mid-2000s, I think, song from them. Great. So this is Pitch Black, Lost in Translation. All right. Apologies for that ad there. Matt, we're talking with Matt Dicey, and we were listening to Pitch Black. Hope you enjoyed that. It's a good long track, isn't it?
Actually tried to pick one of the shorter ones.
I was happy with that. No, it was totally fine. It was absolutely fine. Good grief.
Perfect.
Apologies for that ad. That's dreadful. Now, Matt, you said you're topping up Chardonnay. What exactly are you up to this afternoon?
I'm actually just rotated that brand now. I'm busy on topping some Gamay now. Moved on from Chardonnay to Gamay.
Okay, which we mentioned earlier, which is...
So same thing. So it's in barrel. So all of the wine that ends up going into barrel ends up evaporating. If you're in a distillery, they call it the angel share, and we have the same sort of thing. Barrels are sort of porous, so the wine evaporates out of them, and we have to go through the cellar every couple of weeks and top it up. So otherwise the wine sort of can oxidise and go off if we don't keep the barrels topped.
Yes. Okay.
So just one of those little jobs to do in the winery, which happens every sort of 2 or 3 weeks.
Right.
Going through and topping a shed full of barrels. Yeah.
That'd take quite a while, wouldn't it?
It's definitely one of those jobs that just sort of slowly happens. A lot of school children get roped into topping. It's a great after school activity. So, yeah, good for the youngsters to be involved in the winery as well.
Have you got children?
Yeah, a couple of kids.
Yeah, what ages are they?
Oldest is 19. She's off at Canterbury, and then our youngest Josh is 17.
Okay.
He's year 12 here in Cromwell.
Oh, fantastic. Do you think either of them have a passion for perhaps winemaking in the future, or do they want nothing to do with it?
Josh really enjoyed. He helped this vintage. We sort of had a really tight, focused team in the winery this year. It was pretty much just Alison and I sort of doing the winemaking, and the kids were coming in and doing the punch downs. So and James and Adele would come and help with the punch downs as well. So a really small sort of tight family affair, and that definitely sparked a little bit of interest for Josh. So whether any of the kids see it as something that they want to do, not at this point, no.
I mean, they would have seen all the effort that you put into it, and it is, I guess, it's a lifestyle, isn't it? It's not a job.
It's a bit of both, because you get it's pretty cool because you get to travel a lot with it, and that was one of the things that sort of really attracted me in the first place.
Yeah, well, I can see that, and also
more wine now.
Sorry, what was that?
Sorry, I was just taking a moment to siphon a bit more wine out of a keg.
Very good. Oh, well, this is good. If you explain to the listeners how you do that, we can visualise it. Put it into words, Matt.
Yeah. We literally have a little keg of Gamay, a little beer keg, and I've just got a little hose, and we're just siphoning out of the beer keg with a hose, and then we'll go and use a jug to top the barrels.
Oh, very good.
Very manual process.
Yeah, like you said, your job's hands-on now. Quite different to Mount Difficulty all those years when I suppose,
there's part of that, having people and having the tools and things like that as well. So, you can buy tools to help make it a little bit easier. So it's a bit of both.
Now,
people the big one.
Oh, yeah. Should we talk about Pinot? Because I know that we were discussing before that it gets all the publicity and a lot of other varietals are ignored. But you have said in the past that Pinot Noir is the hero. Do you stand by that? Is it like, the best?
Well, you said before, it's a little bit of a lifestyle job, winemaking, and it really is, because it's, you don't take it home with you. If you enjoy a glass of wine, it's always there. So, and one of the perks of being a winemaker is we enjoy a glass of wine. So, even if you're not you're working, you can enjoy it. And one of the real beauties of it is it is a very social thing. It's a social lubricant, and for us, wine's very much a thing that we have at the dinner table and enjoy with food. So it's something as that lifestyle element that you do get to enjoy and really live with. And one of the wines that attracted me in the first place was Pinot Noir. It is just such a magnificent grape to taste and to get into to try and get to grips with. You had a couple of Bob's sort of descriptors before around the Chenin, but as you get into wine, you sort of like things that are not as obvious, not as big, and perhaps they don't just smack you around the face and sort of just really show you what they are.
Yeah.
You like things that have a little bit more nuance, a little bit more intrigue, and a little bit more this and that. But at the same time, great wine is still really accessible, and anybody can enjoy it. that's always something that's really cool. You know, people say, "Oh, I'm not a wine person. I really drink much wine," and you give them a fantastic wine, and they go, "Wow, that's fucking good gear." And it's like, yeah, you don't have to be a connoisseur to enjoy really good wine. Really good wine, actually, you'll find if people enjoy any wine, everybody can actually pick up a wine and go, "Wow, that's fucking delicious." Excuse me, shouldn't really be swearing.
No, that's twice. I'm going to have to dump you. Call it. I'm sorry. That's beep.
Yeah, boot out. Sorry. Yeah, terrible.
You know what? You know what? I'm
you?
speaking.
Yeah,
Your name is Dicey. What do you expect?
Yeah. Things are going to go piss at some point.
It's got to be a dangerous interview or it's not interesting. Hey, but no, but seriously, it's such a great name. When I remember when I first moved here and I was asking Duncan Forsyth for someone to speak to about wine, and he mentioned your name, and I was like, that's a cool name, and he said there's nothing this guy doesn't know, and I thought, oh yeah, great. So yeah, you had that reputation from the word go, but so for example, let's get specific about a couple of Pinots that you're producing. Let me see. 2019, the Dicey Pinot, that's $42 a pop, which is pretty good these days, isn't it? Or is this one that you'd want to cellar for a wee bit?
Look, it's one of those things, wine's to cellar. If a wine is good, it should always be good, and that comes back to if a wine's really good, lots of people can actually understand that. And wines that cellar, they should also be really good to enjoy, right in the here and now. And that's one of we're talking about Pinot, and it's one of the beauties of Pinot is it's just seductive and it can be delicious and unpretentious while being as pretentious as you like at the same time. It covers all of those bases. So that's one that absolutely you could smash back for dinner, or you could put it in the cellar and watch it evolve. And that has its place as well. And that's what's really neat is that these wines have shown. Being here and studying it in your region, you never know. Is the wine actually going to be ageable? Is it? It's one of the tenets of sort of great wine is that it has the potential not just to get old, but if we throw it in the cellar, we want it to evolve and grow interest and change and be something more than it was, or something different than it was when we threw it in there. And I think one of the beauties of Pinot from Central is that it's really shown and been surprising from such young vines that they're actually really intriguing wines that have the potential to age, and somebody throws them in a cellar and the wine can actually grow and be more interesting. So and for us that's a sort of a hallmark that you're actually onto something that is worth pursuing. So yeah, quite neat.
It's interesting, Matt, because you stepped down from your chief winemaker job at Mount Difficulty, and then your place was taken by Greg Lane, who I think was the winner of a Young Winemaker Award a few years back, if I'm right. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah. He was the New Zealand Young Winemaker maybe about 3 or 4 years ago.
So it's interesting because because Christopher Keys from Gibbston here at Gibbston told me that there's a Young Winemaker Awards dinner, I think, tonight in Bendigo.
Yeah, well, they're actually the New Zealand Young Winemaker competition is being held in Cromwell as we speak. Oh. Yeah, and that wraps up with sort of speaking and dinner engagements. So that's this evening. So those guys are all hard at it at the moment, sort of doing a raft of competitions, not so much in this, but looking at blends and putting together blends and doing trials and doing all of the sort of things that you do as a winemaker, even to sort of looking at more of the account side of things, capital, and
okay.
what should we spend our money on?
Oh, so it's all of that. Yeah, that's all of that too.
All of that too. Yeah, it is a mixture of all of those sort of things.
So will there be an overall winner announced tonight?
Oh, yep. So they are competing right now, and the judges are judging. And this evening, I think they do there's a final speech, and then they they award the young winemaker to one of the contestants.
Right.
That's participated today.
Yeah, terrific. Oh, well, very good. So wine is a very topical. It's always good to talk about wine, but particularly today, because there'll be these young up and comers who are competing and trying to stand out, and that's great. So they'll be the young winemaker of 2022. Not 21,
Yep.
hey?
Yeah.
22.
Well, actually, I actually don't know. There might be 21, 22. I have a funny feeling this has been trying to go on for some time, and, COVID keeps getting in the way. So I'm not actually sure whether this is the 21 guys actually finally getting the opportunity to do it, or whether it's 22.
Could well be, because, hey, we're all playing catch-up, aren't we?
Yeah, we are.
It's like, where did those 2.5 years go?
Just blinked.
I want them back. Surely I'm not that age already. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hey, so we're just about talked out, and I'm sorry to take up so much time, but it's been really great. But you've chosen another track for us, which I want to play now, which is someone I've never heard of. It's Deep House. Can you tell me why you chose? Is it Obi?
Yeah. So it's actually something old, something new. So this is a remix of a Beatles song, Father Mackenzie.
No, is it? Right.
Yeah. So and this is just sort of, I think, reflecting like the changing way that we listen to music, or certainly I've changed a lot, and with streaming and services like SoundCloud and Mixcloud, where you get to listen to people's mixes and what they create and craft. It's sort of really changed the way that you can engage with artists. And this is a remix of a classic. So yeah, quite cool.
Yippee. I'm really looking forward to hearing this. So this is Matt Dicey's final song that we're playing this hour after our Winemaker Wednesday slot. It's been really brilliant talking with you, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. Can we do it again sometime?
Yeah. It's been fun, Leanne.
I'll keep it shorter next time, and you won't have to choose the songs.
No worries. You've had me. I've just been meandering around the winery doing little chores, so it's been magnificent.
I can tell. Well, looking forward to trying some of those gorgeous wines from the new brand. And
awesome. Cool.
And have yourself a fine winter, and really appreciate it.